Thanks to everyone, and especially Ellen. Thank you for including me to be part of this special event to celebrate John's life. My name is Sylvia Juves Fernandez, and my husband is Jorge Fernandez. We were both colleagues and friends to John Prados. When I think of John while we were in high school where we met, three words come to mind: intelligence, maturity, and leadership. As a 15-year-old person in high school, I often wondered about John in terms that I thought maybe he's actually a very important professor at an Ivy League university who scientifically changed or transfer his mind to a young man's body in high school to do or perform a kind of investigation or research. The level of his discussions, the so-called simple books he read, the conversations with teachers about leadership and other topics, such as science and especially history, were completely beyond our scope as high school folks that would, probably we would engage in other kinds of mundane topics. He could easily give a professional presentation, impromptu actually, on history, especially World War II. If my memory serves me right, I would say that it was during our sophomore year that he told us about his involvement in creating this war game. Well, one day he invited us to come over to his parents' house so that we could test drive that game. And we did. I remember that the floor that were these little tiles, a tile floor, and this game was far from being completed, and so we used the tile floors as the game board. This war game was, he thought it would probably be called the Third Reich. And so at that point, we had no idea of the future outcome of this war game or any success in the future. But one thing we were absolutely convinced by the end of that afternoon, and that was that this was beyond being great. We also realized that we had just experienced the inception of something that was bigger than ourselves at our young age of 15 or 16 years old. Well, as it turns out, many years later, when we found out about the enormous success of this war game, followed by more successful war games, followed by various books he published, we recognized two things. How lucky we were to have been or have had a first-hand experience of the creation of something extraordinary. And also how generous of our friend John to allow us to be part of such experience. I want to thank John for letting us be part of that brilliant beginning. Love to all his family. Love to you, Ellen. Thank you so much. And again, Sylvia Juves and my husband, Jorge Fernandez. Delighted to be part of this wonderful occasion. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dorothy Riera. I was a classmate of John during his years in Puerto Rico, and I am so honored to share my memories with him. I remember John all throughout our high school years. In our yearbook, the quote that was below his name was from a British author, and it read, "The mind is the master of the man, and so they can who think they can." Even as a young student, John was a well-informed senior. He liked to be organized. He was an individualist and never conformed with group mentality. Always you could find John reading what we called simple books. While we were reading A Catcher in the Rye, Wuthering Heights, and Treasure Island, John was reading books from World War II and articles from the newspaper on the Vietnam War. He participated in many school clubs, the chess club, the science club, the domino club, and the National Honor Society. This was the only club that you were elected to by the faculty based on character, service, leadership, and academics. At the induction ceremony, John gave the speech on leadership. He was also assistant to the newspaper. John was very, very intense, and you could always find him in the library in a meditation pose. John was humble, and he never made us feel that he was more intelligent than we were. We were young kids at the time, and we knew he was brilliant, but we did not understand the depth of his brilliance. On the forensics team, he wrote about the Vietnam War and how it affected him. He won first prize. When John went to Colombia, and in the summer he would come to Puerto Rico, he would always get together with the class. He never forgot us. John was driven. John was an exceptional student, a brilliant mind, and a great friend. May he rest in peace.
Good morning. My name is Lloyd Gardner, and I'm so very happy to participate in this salute to one of the great people that I've known, John Prados. And it's particularly fitting that this is being done today, because this morning I read the obituary of a man named Ken Potts. He was 102 years old, and he was the oldest person to serve on the USS Arizona when it was sunk on December 7th, 1941. And Mr. Potts, or Seaman Potts, had been ashore at the time of the attack started and went back out to the Arizona, saved some people in the ocean, and went back into the ship and tried to pull out some other people. And he was so typical of the 1930s, born in Honeyville, Illinois, in a house that had no electricity or running water, one-room schoolhouse, joined the CCC, the New Deal thing, and then went into the Navy and served in the Navy there at Pearl Harbor throughout the war. And I thought, who could write this story better than John Prados? Because what John had was a marvelous ability to make the specific and the personal part of the general story of American history, particularly American military and international diplomacy. John Prados, I can't remember when I met him for the first time. He just always seemed to be there at conventions and other meetings where we met and talked. And John, of course, always had the ability to correct anything that I might have done wrong. He would hold that one finger up and say, yes, but you can do this, but you have to think about these other things. And that man has it completely wrong. One other incident I want to mention particularly, one time at a Society of Historians of American Foreign Relations luncheon, the guest speaker was General David Petraeus, and John and I were sitting at the same table. And he had an intermediary who was taking the questions from the audience and giving Petraeus the softball questions. And this really irritated John and his sense of the proper way in which this should be done. And after a few private snorts, he actually got up and left the table. It's the first time I've ever seen him do that. But he felt really very much that David Petraeus was being let off all too easily at that moment. And I could also say that through the years I knew him, I never once doubted John Prados's friendship, his ability to be sort of a representative for all of us in terms of go-between between historians and policymakers, who was respected on all sides. And so I am so really very happy to have participated in this. And Lord, I miss him every day. I may think about John, what he was said about something that was happening abroad or at home. So thank you very much for asking me to participate in this. And I'll say goodbye now and let other people have a chance.
John was first of all, a meticulous scholar, and his attention to detail was phenomenal. In the books that we published together, there were chapters which I'm sure were 7 or 8 pages too long, because John insisted on getting the details of particular incidents or trends, and I couldn't talk him out of it. But when he was not at work, he was a gentle soul with a very nice sense of humor. And we shared many meals together, which included long chats, long conversations. And he had a nice sense of humor, and one of his secret sharings, I think, was baseball. We talked a fair amount of baseball when we were together. And he once sent me, in fact, a small replica of Wrigley Field, which I still keep on a desk here, as a token of esteem. He couldn't have picked a better one. And I should say that I thought John was brought out to his best by Ellen, who was a great companion for him, and we enjoyed many evenings with both of them. We wish her well, and we have fond memories of John, which we will keep.
My name is Fred Logeval, and I want to say to begin with that I'm just so sorry that I can't be with all of you for this really special occasion to honor John, one of our great historians, and also just a wonderful human being. But at least I can be here virtually and say something from afar. I'm in my native Sweden at the moment. I'm in Uppsala, and at least I get a chance to do this. And I want to, I guess, indicate that John meant a great deal to me as a young historian. When I'm starting out and I encountered John for the first time at an academic conference, as one often encountered John. He was a mainstay at a number of annual meetings, as you know. I'll never forget that first meeting because he cut an intimidating figure. And especially, again, for somebody who's just starting out, to be on a panel with John Prados, my goodness, you quickly learned you had to have your act together. You needed to know where your sources were from. You needed to be able to back up all the arguments that you're making in your presentation. And that taught me a lot. And I think the second time I was on a panel with John, I therefore knew, okay, I've got to be prepared for any and all interventions and be able to really defend what I'm arguing. And that's just hugely important. And I've tried to teach my own students to do the same thing and to approach, therefore, their academic presentations in that way. And yet he was also not, he wasn't ideological in the sense that what he cared about were the sources. If you could present an argument, even one that he disagreed with, but you could back it up, if not with hard evidence, then at least with, inference and with circumstantial evidence, then that was okay. And so he just meant so much to me as a scholar. I loved seeing him at conferences. I realized that underneath the sort of somewhat forbidding exterior was a teddy bear, a warm-hearted guy with a wonderful laugh. I think you all know what I mean. His laugh is just, it's just something that I treasured. And so best of luck to all of you, of course, and on this occasion when you're all together, enjoy each other and your memory of this extraordinary man. And thanks for giving me the floor for a minute or two. Take care.